Yo, 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 what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another Auditing Africa. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking, all right? So if you guys haven't done the survey about the notifications in the chat, please make sure you guys take a moment and do that. If you're having trouble with the notifications, make sure that you hit that Discord link that is in the comment section so that you get notifications. All right. If you guys can hear me, everything sounds good. Give me a thumbs up or a radiation emoji. If you guys cannot hear me or it sounds bad, then give me a thumbs down. All right. I'm going to give a shout out to everybody that is in the building early. All right. We got Carlton Way in the house. We got Lehman Lucas in the building. We got Carla Lockhart in the building. And we got my man Boxing MMA. Shout out to my man Boxing MMA. What's good with it, bro? Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Yo, I don't know if you're on IG or not, but Izzy told me that him, Butcher, and Black Guru had a live stream last night on IG. And so apparently at some point, maybe this weekend, you know what I'm saying, we might do a stream and Butcher and Black Guru, you know what I'm saying, a pull up and you know what I'm saying, we chop it up. That'll be fun, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, hopefully we can get that popping off, you know what I'm saying? When will Africa do to Europe and Asia what's been done to it? That's my question. The floor is all you guys's. What you guys answer? What do you think? Will it ever happen? Will it not happen? Now, shout out to my man Carlton Way and shout out to my man Kid Gravity, because we've been joking around and we've been trolling with this talking about zero, and we've been joking around talking about the Oblivion life and the purity of Oblivion, right? Well, let me explain to you guys, quote unquote, the purity of Oblivion. Let me ask you guys a question. What does pure mean? What does pure mean? Give me a simple definition of pure. You guys recall when I say something occurs in a very small amount, I call it, quote unquote, Lysol ratios. And the reason why I call things Lysol ratios is because Lysol allegedly says that it gets rid of 97% of bacteria or viruses on a surface. Lysol ratios. How many white people aren't racist? Lysol ratios. I know you guys have heard me say that before. Now, Lysol ratio isn't quite pure, right? It's interesting how the concept of pure works, because pure is everything and pure is nothing at the same time. Pure means that you are every bit of one concentrated thing. The fact that you are every bit of one concentrated thing means that when it comes to contaminants, there are zero. So now that we understand the definition of pure, or at least have some kind of conceptualization or possibly a visual or whatever, my next question for everybody is, what is a contaminant? What's a contaminant? Somebody let me know what a contaminant is. What is contamination? Is it a nation full of contaminants? What is contamination? Is contamination a country full of contaminants? What is contamination? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, shout out to everybody watching. We got 16 people watching on YouTube. We got 3 people watching on Rumble. Make sure you guys smash that like button on YouTube. Let's get those likes up over 20 on Rumble. Let's get everybody smashing the like button and sharing the stream. Carlton Way says when something foreign enters something. That's interesting. Some people might say that's xenophobic. Other people might say that's good hygiene. Depends on who you talk to, right? Let me ask you guys a question. When it comes to politics here in the United States or in the diaspora, are politics pure or are they contaminated? Shout out to Dark Star so far over on Twitch. And if you guys aren't subscribed on Twitch, make sure you guys take a moment and subscribe on Twitch. Shout out to Val. Val says making impure by polluting or poisoning. Let me ask you guys a question. How many people know what normal saline is? We're doing a lot of medical references today. How many people know what normal saline is? If you guys know what normal saline is, explain it to me. And let's ask the question, well, why is it normal? What is normal? Let me ask you guys a question. Is normal an opinion or is normal a fact? Is normal an opinion or is normal a fact? Which one? Carla says normal is an opinion. If you guys agree with Carla, then give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree with Carla, then give me a thumbs down. That looks pretty bad, doesn't it? Well, nothing to fear. It gets worse. Val Williams says, what's normal to you might not seem normal to me. This is going to sound like a Dr. Seuss book. We'll see. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this, but normal is a mathematical property. There's many different kinds of normal. When it comes to geometry, normal can be at right angles, going directly away from. For a curve, imagine a line touching and matching the slope. So now we're talking about slopes and graphs. There's a normal distribution. A random variable with Gaussian distribution is said to be normally distributed and called a normal deviate. A normal number, in mathematics, a real number is said to be simply normal in an integer base of 1 if its infinite sequence of digits is distributed uniformly, in the sense that each of the digits has the digit of b value has the same, and then it goes on with more of the definition. So then they talk about normal in geometry, normal distribution, normal number. So if normal describes a mathematical property, my question is, how can normal be an opinion? So that brings me back to the question, how many people can explain normal saline? How many people have ever heard of normal saline? I'm sure everybody's heard of it. People that wear contacts, you buy contact solution, it's normal saline. In most cases, seawater is normal saline. So somebody explain normal saline. Why is it normal? Normal saline. A 0.9 saline solution of sodium chloride and water. This concentration of sodium chloride is considered approximately isotonic with tears. It is used to store and rinse soft contact lenses to irrigate the eyes. Normal saline, NaCl, 0.9%. That's because it's distributed at a 0.9%, which is almost 100% ratio in water. Normal saline, salt water at a normal distribution with salt to H2O molecules. Normal distribution. Also, if the concentration is 0.9%, that means that it's almost pure. It's only 10% contaminated, right? So now we have a working definition of these terms, right? We now have a working definition of these terms. So now that we have a working definition of these terms, we can go back and ask the question again. When it comes to politics in the United States and across the diaspora, first question, are they normal? Second question, are they pure? Third question, are they contaminated? Give me you guys' thoughts. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that everything is okay? Is everything all good? We good? We all right? Nothing to see here, folks? Carlton says Africa is contaminated. How many people believe Carlton? How many people agree with Carlton that Africa is contaminated? Now, my question is, do you all believe that we are contaminated here? If you guys feel that we're contaminated here, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't, give me a thumbs down. And let me tell you guys something. If you guys ever thought that somebody who has a radiation emoji, a toxic waste emoji as a part of my brand, we would never have a conversation like this, you truly are naive. Contamination? Yes, no, maybe. Shout out to Carla. Carla says yes, yes, yes. I agree. Okay. So now let's list the sources of contaminants. That's how you would deal with cleaning out a pool, right? You check the pH, see if it's acidic, see if it's neutral, see if it's alkaline, and make sure that there's no contaminants. Because if there's contaminants, then things can happen. The color of the water can change. You can have microbes and bacteria grow in the water, right? We don't want that, do we? Let me ask you guys a question. Are microbes and bacteria growing in our water? Val Williams says, no, we're not good. White people are always subverting and destabilizing Africa. Diaspora and FBA politics. Now, let me ask you guys a question. If white people are doing that successfully, then that means that they're better at doing what they're doing than we are, right? We haven't accommodated. We haven't evolved. We haven't countered. We haven't changed anything. We're continuing to try to unscrew a standard screw with a Phillips head screwdriver. How many people have done that before? How much luck did you have? Did your luck remind you of how politics look for us? What ends up happening if you try to remove a standard head screw with a Phillips screwdriver is that you damage the screw and you damage the screwdriver and nothing gets done. I gotta agree, it doesn't work. Shout out to Val, it doesn't work. So now the best course of action would probably be to get a standard screwdriver because things would go a lot smoother, right? So we might want to start working on trying to find a standard screwdriver. Even though a butter knife isn't optimal, that's a start. A butter knife might work. You know what I'm saying? A butter knife might work. Not the best thing, but it could work. I don't think we even working with a butter knife. We up here, we don't put down the Phillips screwdriver. We're trying to unscrew things with a fork now, and that's not going to help either. So now, when you deal with infection control or when you deal with sanitary systems, one of the things that you try to do is you try to find quote unquote the source of infection, the source of contamination. Ways to stop contamination, ways to stop infection, ways to stop poisoning are to have sound barriers of entry, right? Let me ask you guys a question. How sound is the barrier of entry if you're quote unquote the people who are known to accept everybody? Now, as irritated as people get about racism, I don't encourage racism. I think racism is a disgusting institution. However, racism has clearly been an effective barrier to entry for many things. Would you guys agree? If you guys agree, then give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, then give me a thumbs down. Racism has been an effective barrier to entry. Now, let me ask you guys a question. What has racism been a barrier of entry to for us? See, this is what I'm talking about right here. Dark Star says economic sociology and spirituality. Shout out to Dark Star. I'll give you two of those. I'm not going to say spirituality or not because I don't believe in spirits, but we can definitely go with economic and sociology. Economic and social. Shout out to Cameron. What's good with it, bro? Barrier to entry. What about class in the United States? How many black billionaires are there that are in the top 10 most wealthy men in the world? You think racism had anything to do with that? What are all of the things that racism have effectively been a barrier of entry to? That's what I need you guys to tell me in the comment section. That's important. If we don't know what racism has been a barrier of entry to, we kind of don't have a starting place. And we should be beyond the starting place. I actually agree with Carla. It's a barrier or it's a subduing of entry for us to damn near everything. You guys agree with Carla? If you guys agree with Carla, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. So now let me ask you guys a question. Would you guys say that when it comes to the world's billionaires, it's quote unquote pure? Because remember, pure means no contaminants. The world's most powerful people is a pure sample because there's no contaminants. Now, somebody will take this stream and twist my words because the things that I talk about require too much thought. They require too many calories. And somebody will say, here, see, Robert Kuhn, he calling black people a contaminant. And if you ever hear a video that says that, I encourage you to share it because I'm not going to do anything with it because I'm not about to sit up here and repeat myself a million times. We're talking in terms of math. We're talking in terms of percentages. We're talking in terms of solution theory and sanitation strategy. And the reason why we're talking in terms of that is because people always say, well, we've been infiltrated. How many times have you heard somebody whining and crying about infiltration? We've been infiltrated. Every time we used to try to do something, they used to infiltrate us. How many times you heard that? Yep, they say I'm off code when actually I'm speaking in mathematics, which actually is as on code as you can possibly get. I mean, it don't get no more on code than zeros and ones, but whatever. Prove me wrong is all I gotta say. Fuck all the name calling. Fuck all the ad hominem shit. Prove me wrong. Now, we's a benza infiltrated, right? Let me ask you guys a question. If you happen to get C-19, if you happen to get the common cold, if you happen to get a flu, did you's a gets a infiltrated? If you's a got to infiltrated and got sick, boss, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, then give me a thumbs down. Getting sick, getting an infection, getting contaminated, getting dirty, you've been infiltrated, right? Why do you have an immune system? Oh, an immune system is a barrier to entry. Why do you have skin? Oh, because skin is a barrier to entry. Why do cells have cell membranes with glycoproteins on the outside of them? It's a barrier to entry. Letting people infiltrate has become part of the culture, it seems. And if it hasn't become part of the culture, it seems very common. Now, if you have a culture that has infiltration as part of it or something that's very common to it, that's dealing with issues from a culture that focuses on exclusivity as part of it, you kind of got issues. That's kind of not going to work out real well, is it? So now my question is, if racism is a quote unquote barrier to entry, shout out to my man Jay Bird. If racism is a quote unquote barrier to entry, my question is, what is the counter barrier to entry? Because that's what I always ask about. I always ask about what the counter is. So what's the counter? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, shout out to everybody watching on YouTube. We got 9 people watching on YouTube. If you guys haven't smashed the like button, make sure you guys smash that like button. Also, if you guys haven't hit the bell, make sure you guys hit the bell. If you guys have not shared the stream or subscribed to the backup channels, make sure you guys do that. And also, if you're not subscribed to the Discord, make sure you guys hit the Discord link in the chat. Shout out to the people watching on Rumble. We got 13 people watching on Rumble. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure that you guys hit the follow button, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video, and please share the stream to your social media. So now, again, so now in a half hour, we've figured out hundreds of years of issues. That's not bad. We're working with AI learning ratios. We're on machine learning time. shout out to us. We've made hundreds of years of progress in a half hour, man. And who says that humans are outdated? Who says that? You guys give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourselves pats on the back. We figured out all of our problems. The only problem is that we haven't ran any field tests and we don't have any prototypes. So although it may sound good in theory, there's nothing that backs that up without hardcore evidence, right? So now I want to ask you guys, what are the current barriers of entry today? Are there any? Let me ask you guys a question. Are clothes a barrier of entry? In many cases, culture can be a barrier to entry, right? What are the barriers of entry? The fact that we just not rattling off answers here, that should tell you something about exposure. That should tell you something about vulnerability. That should tell you something about planning. And that should also tell you something about strategy. What does that tell you? That tells you that when it comes to not having strategy, we're working with high levels of purity. When it comes to strategy, it's existing in the oblivion realm. That's what that's an indication of. Language is also a barrier. Facts, Carlton. Now, if if the code was fixed, right? If people actually read it from the Neely Fuller Jr. book and all that, and actually applied it, code could be a barrier, right? Education too. Facts. So all of these things, we can look at all of these things, right? And all of these things can be utilized as indicators of how effective things are going versus how ineffective things are going. So let me ask you guys a question. Y'all already know what that question finna be. Effect in terms of effectiveness versus ineffectiveness. How effective are things going? And based on however you answer that, I need you guys to run it down for me why they're going the way that they're going. I need the hows and I need the whys. Carlton Way says we're going to freestyle ourselves to empowerment. We don't need a strategy. I guarantee you there's some people that would agree with that. There's a lot of people, Carlton, that don't realize that you're being sarcastic. There's a lot of people like, he right. That brother Carlton smart. You know what I'm saying? Carla said strategies are needed to gain or break through barriers of entry. Facts. And sometimes if you don't have any barriers, then you can just walk through the door. Let me ask you guys a question. Is immigration policy a barrier to entry? Shout out to Val. Val says we don't have any strategies. That's like friends. So now we know two things that we don't have. We don't have any strategies and we don't have any friends. We need to start a we don't have list. We could add power to that list. So that's three things. We got the Holy Trinity already. We don't have friends. We don't have power. We don't have strategies. I want you guys to think about that going forward. Can a value chain be a barrier to entry? Ooh. Ooh, see that now it's forming like Voltron. Let me ask you guys a question. How can a value chain be a barrier of entry? That can stop people from going into business, right? That can stop people from making certain amounts of money, right? Let me ask you guys a question. Can politics be a barrier to entry? I agree with Val. If you guys agree with Val, then give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. We need to come up with strategies to protect ourselves and not just for empowerment. Real quick, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you guys show lots of love to Dark Star so far over on Twitch with the 690 tip. We got a stream sponsor, so shout out to Darkstar. Definitely appreciate it. Make sure you guys throw some radiation emoji in the chat and show Darkstar some love. See, in your own personal life, in your own everyday travels, these are things that I think would help people improve their output and productivity. Because if you ask me, in reality, it's a nice thought for people to strive to be B1. It's a nice thought for people to strive to be Pan-African. It's a nice thought for people to strive to be pro-Black. But it's my personal opinion that in a world that's completely dominated and controlled by WS, at this particular moment in history, it's impossible to do those things. And the reason why is because you would need control, power, and assets to be able to go from the beginning of the supply chain to the end of the supply chain. Now, nobody's saying that that can't be a goal, but I think that it's difficult. Case in point, broadcasting on YouTube. Case in point, buying a vehicle from Chevrolet. We put a lot of unrealistic expectations on ourselves. And the thing is that if you put unrealistic expectations on yourself, in many cases, that can be just as bad as not having any expectations at all. The first time you pick up a basketball, do you expect to be able to play like Michael Jordan? If you think that that's what's going to happen, unless you happen to be lucky and gifted, that's probably the start of your failure. You're not going to pick up a basketball and play like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't pick up a basketball and start playing like Michael Jordan. Why the hell you think you're going to do it? So I think that one thing that is lacking is practicality, because when it comes to strategies, strategies have to be practical. They can't be fantasies. A fantasy and practicality are two different things. Practical means something that's achievable. Fantasy is something that you imagine and envision. How many people bought a cell phone from a Black-owned cell phone manufacturer? How many of y'all talking on Black Cell right now? Y'all got a phone with the nationwide plan from Black Cell? You gonna pick up a basketball and play like Bill Cartwright? Facts. Bill Cartwright had the ugliest free throws that I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't even know how free throws could be ugly, but his were. How many people got a stove in their house that's built by Black Oven? Why am I asking that? There's a reason. The reason why I'm asking that is because the current world that we live in has many high barriers of entry. Why don't any of the companies that I asked about exist? One of the reasons why they don't exist is because the market share is pure. Verizon might have 50% of the market share. Sprint might have 25% of the market share. AT&T might have another 25% of the market share, but that 50, 25, and 25 is 100% white, which means that there's zero contaminants. They have a pure monopoly. That makes it difficult. Walmart is one of the reasons why it's difficult for mom and pop shops to survive, because Walmart is so big, they can buy things at such a high volume that they drive down the prices so low that they buy everything and cause supply shortages. Or they can decide to not buy anything and drive the price up to where it's unaffordable. Walmart and their logistics strategy can create barriers of entry to smaller stores. The existence of Walmart and Target can create barriers to entry for other people who want to get into the same market. Carlton Way says, I look around me and most of the stuff I see is white owned. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Inside of the vehicle that you drive, many of the parts come from different companies, right? A lot of the electronic parts may come from Qualcomm. A lot of the tires may come from Bridgestone, Firestone, right? Windows may come from a local glass company or something like that. Out of all the component parts in a car, how many component parts are manufactured at Black owned businesses, Black owned manufacturing companies? Now, what's interesting is that all of the raw resources to make the cars are coming from not a Black owned anything, but a Black majority continent and countries inside of it, right? But out of all the component parts, the Sony radio, the Bridgestone Firestone tires, the paint, none. Why? Because many of these businesses already exist and the market share is saturated. Uh-oh. We got another term talking about solutions and chemicals. Saturated. What does saturated mean? Carlton Way said he waiting in his Umar Mobile car ignition switch. Lloyd Sky 9 says the ambition from Black people globally isn't there. Very few actually want independence. So now here's the question. If what Lloyd Sky 9 says is true, which I haven't done a survey, so I can't say with 100% certainty that it's true, but there is a lot of data and evidence that would suggest that without me simply going and asking people. You guys know what comes next. You got to ask yourself the question, is the world correct? And if what Lloyd Sky 9 is saying is indeed true in many cases, the world as we see it, how it is right now, and the trajectory that it's on would have to be correct. So now how do you correct the correct world? The world is 1 + 1 = 2. How do you correct that? How do you correct the correct world, ladies and gentlemen? 1 + 1 = 2. I need you guys to tell me how to correct that. Or is correction the answer? If you can't correct something because it's already correct, then correction's not the solution, right? One plus one equals two. Can't correct it. Val Williams says they take Africans' natural resources and create products in the Western world. They try to keep African countries from producing products. For example, cocoa from Africa, but process it at Nestle. Yeah. And my thing is, if somebody's taking your shit, right? You guys remember that song that Mobb Deep made? We live in this to the day that we die. Survival of the fit, only the strong survive. So if somebody's pushing you down and taking your shit, and then they manufacture it and sell it back to you, not only does that mean that they're stronger than you, that also means that they're better at extorting you than you are at extorting them, right? So now you can either start working out, take a karate class, or you can keep getting your ass whooped, or you can buy a pipe, or you can keep getting your ass whooped, right? But there are things that you can do to change that, right? Now, Carlton says change the variables. Yeah, there you go, Carla. Right. 0.5 plus 0.5 plus 0.5 plus 0.5 equals 2, or 2 plus 0, right? Or we could change it all together and make it -2 times -1, right? Because we all know that multiplication is another form of addition, right? So you don't in a system where everything is correct, you have to change things, which is a problem. Because I think that if people were able to change things, we wouldn't still be doing the same shit. You know what I'm saying? That we've been doing for decades. There you go, Val. That's what's up. That's what you do. Shout out to my man D-Bug over on Twitch. D-Bug says, Rob, you know if you bring up Mobb Deep, you gotta say rest in peace, Prodigy. I miss his music. Listen, man, shout out to Prodigy. He was way, way, way ahead of his time. You know what I'm saying? Way ahead of his time. So now let me ask you guys a question. Have you guys ever thought about these issues in these terms? If you guys have ever thought about these issues in these terms, then give me a thumbs up and let me know what you came up with. If you haven't thought of these issues in these terms, then give me a thumbs down. I think that it might not be a bad idea for people to think of things in these terms. But now the only problem is that everybody doesn't want to think about the problems at all, first of all. And second of all, everybody doesn't want to think about problems in these terms. So I don't really, care if people think about things in these terms or not. But for the people that are interested in thinking about these things in these terms, I'd advise you to let me know what you come up with. What do you come up with? How'd you come up with it? What next? Definitely something that should be considered, right? That's definitely something that should be considered. So now we know, and I agree with Carla. If you guys agree with Carla, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree with Carla, give me a thumbs down. Now we have an idea of why we're talking about things in terms of sanitation. Here's another easy question. Would you say that our politics need to be sanitized? That's easy. If you guys think that they do, give me a thumbs up. If you guys think that they don't, then give me a thumbs down. That's pretty easy, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this article here from the Wall Street Journal. And as we're reading this article, I want you guys to ask yourself, are the politics in Africa sanitary? Now, when I say are the politics in Africa sanitary, if there's contaminants would lead to what Professor Black Truth talks about when he says, quote unquote, the derangement of internal politics. I want you guys to look at all of that. Now, while we're looking at that, we need to be honest about our situation here in the United States. Because again, the purpose of Auditing Africa is not to be a channel that bashes Africa. Because as you guys all know, I think the diaspora war is stupid. And I think that it's something that people are put up to by outside forces. I've said that before. However, we can look at commonalities that are practiced by the United States and other European nations in countries where there's black people, or locations or regions of the world where there's black people, and see how the same things are practiced all over, and come up with methods and strategies to deal with those things. And if some people want to deal with them, then they can deal with them. And if they don't want to deal with them, then they can make live streams about Kiki Palmer and Adam 22 all damn day. And maybe, you know what I'm saying, talking about that shit all damn day will it'll maybe possibly take the chains off of somebody somewhere. You know what I'm saying? The US funds shadow police units all over the world. Let me ask you guys a question. Is that a contaminant? Why is the US funding shadow police units all over the world? Now, as much as people love the diaspora war, I think this might be something that's a little bit more dangerous, you know what I'm saying, than some African TikTok video. I think this might be something that's a little bit more dangerous than, some FBA calling somebody a African booty scratcher. But what I think the issue is that I think when the United States white money is funding entire shadow police units all over Africa, it's easier to make a TikTok than it is to tell them you got to get out of here or else TikTok. The U.S. funds shadow police units all over the world. They pursue matters ranging from heroin smuggling to protecting pangolins, pursuing American interests when regular cops can't be trusted. Why are we pursuing American interests in other countries? And what do American interests look like in other countries? What do American interests look like in other countries? I think that's a good and a fair question. What do you guys think? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, we got 12 people watching on YouTube. Shout out to everybody that's watching on YouTube. Let's try to get the likes over 20. So everybody smash the like button. And shout out to everybody who is watching on Rumble. We got 18 people watching on Rumble. Subscribe to the channel, hit the follow button, and also smash that like button and share the stream. The sting operation went off perfectly. Kenyan police detectives, subsidized by the United States government, pretended to be in the market for a live pangolin, an endangered armadillo-like animal whose scales and meat fetch a high price in parts of Asia. Now, why are Kenyan police, shout out to you, Law, why are Kenyan police being subsidized by the United States? Let's start there. And how many people knew about this? If you knew about this, give me a thumbs up. If you guys didn't know about this, then give me a thumbs down. A Kenyan undercover agent flashed a wad of cash and invited the alleged ringleader of the poaching gang to close a sale in a black Land Cruiser rented with funds from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Within moments, Kenyan police surrounded the SUV and arrested 3 suspects. An officer designated as pangolin handler donned leather gloves, seized the animal, which curled up into a defensive ball, and secured it in a wooden crate padded with fabric. Now, let me ask you guys a question. What would be the purpose of this? What's the purpose of this? The arrest of the alleged pangolin traffickers in August on Kenya's Indian Ocean coast was a tiny victory for wildlife conservation. Some 2.7 million pangolins are poached in Africa each year, pushing them from the edge of extinction, according to the African Wildlife Foundation. Now that's interesting, right? Why is the United States intervening in that? What's the United States' interest in that? It was also a prime example of how U.S. law enforcement agents operate behind the scenes overseas. In more than a dozen developing countries where the U.S. believes police agencies are so riddled with corruption that they can't be trusted, American embassy personnel handpicked their own local law enforcement units, screened them for misconduct, and to a large degree assigned them missions aligned with U.S. interests. Let me ask you guys a question. Is that derangement of internal politics? That's beyond contaminated. That's septic. Would you guys agree that that's beyond contaminated? That's septic. Oh, here go. That's another term for everybody. Septic. What does septic mean? People have a septic tank. You know, a lot of times if you cut yourself, you can put on antiseptics. What does septic mean? The U.S. State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs says it has vetted members of 105 police units worldwide for agencies including the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Homeland Security doing a lot of stuff not in the homeland. What's up with that? Because some agencies do their own vetting, the U.S. State Department said that it was unable to provide a global count of U.S. aligned units or officers they employ. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Do you all believe that the United States State Department is unable to provide a global count of U.S. aligned units or officers? Or are they refusing to do it because they don't want to? Shout out to ULaw. ULaw says the definition of septic is infected with microorganisms, especially harmful bacteria. Looks like Africa's infected with macroorganisms, such as harmful foreign entities and harmful foreign interests. That's what it seems like. Let me ask you guys a question. Out of everything that we've read so far, how does it improve or benefit Africa? It said there was no central office tracking all of the unit's activities or the total government spending that goes into them. The State Department Bureau of Diplomatic Security alone says it has 16 vetted units established under agreements with governments from Peru to the Philippines. The Fish and Wildlife Service funds police in Uganda and Nigeria. So again, I mean, like, what is the national emergency where they need to be overseas patrolling what goes on with particular animals? Let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that they're doing more than just patrolling the animals? Are they doing more than just patrolling the animals? In Kenya, the FBI, Homeland Security, Drug Enforcement Administration, and Fish and Wildlife Service each have their own vetted detectives from the Kenyan Directorate of Criminal Investigations. The units pursue matters ranging from heroin smuggling to passport and visa forgery to human trafficking and criminal abuse of American citizens. American agents stationed at the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi don't have arrest powers in Kenya, but their local partners do. So now, do you think that they chose these local partners for the local partners to work as a front for the American nationals in Kenya? Kenyan officials stress that the units ultimately answer to Mohammed Amin, Kenya's director of criminal investigations, in keeping with the local law and the U.S. Kenyan agreements that establish them. In practical terms, the Kenyan detectives often take strong guidance from U.S. embassy officials. Again, how does this help Kenya? And my question is, why would Kenya do this? What is or where is the benefit in doing this for Kenya? Where's the benefit in this for Kenya at? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, shout out to everybody that's watching on YouTube. We got 19 people watching on YouTube and we got 14 likes. If everybody can take a moment and smash that like button, get us up over 20 likes, that'd be great. Shout out to the people watching on Rumble. We got 20 people watching on Rumble. If everybody can take a moment, smash that like button, hit the bell, share the stream to your social media, that'd be great. We, for the most part, have operational control, said Supervisory Agent Ryan Williams of the State Department Bureau of Diplomatic Security, who directed 5-person Kenyan police unit out of the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi. Kenyan detectives undergo a polygraph test before being offered a position in the unit. The global spread of U.S. vetted foreign police units is little known and faces little public scrutiny. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Why is that? Why is that? Why would that be? That's something that everybody should know about, don't you guys think? Some Kenyans who don't know of the unit's existence bridle at the notion that foreigners wield so much influence over domestic law enforcement. Now, there we go. That is a key issue. That is a key point of contention. That is something that people really need to look at and something that people really need to take into consideration. Why is that going on? Why is that being allowed? And what's being done to deal with it? Now, again, to get a survey, to put it on the record, how many people knew about this? If you guys knew about this and were aware of it, give me a thumbs up. If this is something completely new to you and you haven't heard about any of this, then give me a thumbs down. They don't have autonomy. Mergy Kamain, lawyer for the alleged pangolin traffickers, said of the vetted of officers. They basically work at the behest of a foreign nation, and it's not right. The DEA pioneered the strategy during the cocaine wars in Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru in the 1980s. Now, why would they have done that? Why would they have done that? And now, let me ask you guys a question. Here we are on Auditing Africa talking about what's going on in Africa, and now we're discussing the DEA pioneering a strategy during the cocaine wars in Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru in the 1980s. Now, my question is, what went on during the cocaine wars in Bolivia in 1980, and how did that affect the United States, and how did that ultimately affect Black people here in the United States? I need you guys to let me know. Resident American narcotic agents, frustrated by the drug cartel's influence over local police, took it upon themselves to identify officers they felt that they could trust, according to research conducted at the time by Ethan Nadelman, then a Princeton University professor. At the time, the DEA's ability to keep vetted units clean and effective depended on extensive diplomatic pressure from the United States government, Nadelman found. So now, as you guys can see, now what they're doing is they're utilizing their information gathering apparatus to come up with a strategy to derange the internal politics that were being utilized by the cartel to control the local police. Now, what I need you guys to know, or what I need to ask of you guys is, when have we ever done anything successful to this magnitude right here as far as deranging internal politics? And my question is, in order to change the trajectory of certain things, will we have to at some point attempt or make attempts to derange or manipulate internal politics elsewhere? Because if you ask me, it makes most sense to do what works. And if you look at the state that we're in, it's clear that what was done worked. So if you ask me, how do you counter that? You get good at what works, and then you innovate and improve it. So now here it says, now the practice has become routine. Look at this. Just like I said, they did data analysis. use the data to come up with strategy. Now that they've come up with strategy and ran the field test, now it's become a uniform, standardized practice. So again, like I said, people can say what they want to. They can get mad as they want to. I don't care how mad somebody get. I don't care what anybody calls me. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Now the practice has become routine and global for law enforcement agencies throughout the United States government. The units operate under memorandums of understanding between the U.S. and the local authorities. Now, when it comes to these little agreements and these little arrangements, who do you think benefits the most? Who benefits the most from these kind of arrangements? Who benefits the most? In May, a vetted American embassy unit in the South American country of Guyana helped track down and arrest a man wanted in the U.S. for sexual assault of a child, according to the State Department. A Colombian unit dismantled a 7-city human smuggling operation that was charging $4,000 to $5,000 a head to provide migrants with fake documents to secure U.S. visas, according to Colombian and U.S. authorities. Kenyan officers who win positions in vetted units get upgraded training, the prestige of working in an elite squad, depending on the unit, as much as twice their usual pay. U.S. agencies provide intelligence they might not share with ordinary Kenyan police. So now, do you all see how the United States government is using a value chain to derange the internal politics through the Kenyan police? They're using their fake status, right? Which we all know that one of the most successful fake status strategies was racism, right? We'll create this fake status of being a superior race and falsely propagandize ourselves as inherently better than everybody and make everybody strive to be like us and make everybody kiss our ass and make everybody act like they want to be us. And then we'll create a club of exclusivity where we have a particular group of people that will just never be able to benefit from that particular designation, while we give other people partial designations as long as they do our bidding. We'll give them a paycheck, we'll give them some political power, we'll give them a little bit of inside information. We'll utilize all of the things that we've stolen to pay our piece to our artificial affiliates. You see how that works? The benefits of such collaboration and partnership are immense, and the most important thing being the assurance of the safety and security of the people we serve, said Inspector Mike Mugo, a spokesperson for the Kenyan Directorate of Criminal Investigations, or DCI. Vetted units tend to perform significantly better than their unvetted counterparts, securing higher arrest, prosecution, and conviction rates, according to a U.S. Embassy spokesperson in Nairobi. Now, let's examine that, right? Why is that? Why would that be the case? Why would that be the case, ladies and gentlemen? Why would vetted units tend to perform slightly better than unvetted units, securing higher arrests, prosecutions, and convictions, according to a U.S. Embassy spokesperson? Why would that be? There have been a few instances in which detectives from vetted units have proven corrupt, but the embassy spokesman said the bad actors were quickly identified, removed, and replaced before there could be significant impacts. Those Kenyan officers were usually exposed through repeated lie detector testing, the spokesman said. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that a lot of the people in these vetted units are throwing other officers under the bus to try to get more perks, doing something like some cooning? If you guys think that that's going on, then give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't, then give me a thumbs down. Val says in 2018, the U.S. State Department paid $500,000 to explore gender identities of men and boys in Kenya. Why? Now, here's my question. Why did the Kenyans allow the study to take place? You remember what I told you guys about not giving up information just because somebody asked you a question doesn't mean that you have to answer it. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Is protecting your information creating a barrier of entry? If you guys agree that protecting your information is creating a barrier to entry, then give me a thumbs up. If you don't, then give me a thumbs down and let me know why. Mugo, the Kenyan DCI spokesperson, said he knew of no such cases in which vetted officers had compromised investigations or otherwise been corrupted. In recent months, DCI chief admin has appeared alongside U.S. Ambassador Meg Whitman to announce American reward money for wanted terrorist suspects and to preside over the destruction of tons of allegedly smuggled sandalwood, an endangered tree. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys think that these people that they're calling terror suspects are actually terror suspects, or could they possibly be people that say, we want these people out of here? Are they actual terrorists, or are they people that say this is our home and you don't live here and you shouldn't be telling us what to do? Get the hell out. Is it, when the United States calls people a terrorist, is it usually more of that kind of situation where the United States think that they run shit and they shouldn't be running anything except for as far away from that situation as possible? Because as we all know, certain people, in large part, United States, Americans, United States government, they definitely have their way of making things up, don't they? They definitely got their way of making things up. Shout out to Black Bitcoin Key. What's good with it, bro? The Kenyan National Police Service has been criticized by civil society groups and politicians for rampant corruption and other serious problems. The traffic officer routinely demand bribes from drivers. The country's president, William Ruto, accused the DCI's elite special services unit of extrajudicial killings and closed it down last year. We cannot deny the fact that we have a few rogue police officers in the service, just like we have errant officers in other professions, said Mugo, the DCI spokesperson. Still, the first rule for the elite Kenyan units assigned to U.S. Embassy is that they don't tell other police the plan. So now let me ask you guys a question. Why is that the first rule? And let me ask you something else. Is that a barrier to entry? So again, what you guys see here is that I'm not just making this stuff up. I mean, it's plain as day right here. The first rule for the elite Kenyan units assigned to the U.S. Embassy is that they don't tell other police the plan. Now, why is that the first rule? That's what I need you guys to let me know the answer to. Why is that the first rule? Why is that rule number one? The vetted officers know that if the word of an operation leaks, the chances that are when they arrive, the elephant ivory would be hidden or the fake U.S. passports would be destroyed. That's not the only reason, but it's part of the reason. Even police are our own enemies sometimes, said Inspector Joseph Courier, who runs the 9-officer Kenyan Wildlife Crime Unit. Her team is funded. Look at this. Her team is funded by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is required by U.S. law to combat trafficking and protected species. Now, let me ask you guys a question. How come taxpayers don't complain about this? How do you guys feel that your taxpayer money is being used for this? Are you happy about it? Everybody feel good? Make you feel a little bit better this morning? You gonna put that Tylenol and put those vitamins back in the bottle? You feel good because of this? The Kenyan diplomatic security team, directed by Agent Williams of the U.S. Embassy, focuses on gangs that forge U.S. passports. Increasingly, the officers have been rescuing young Somali Americans from centers that market themselves to desperate diaspora parents as experts in drug treatment and Islamic education, but can be abusive. In September, Williams got a tip that U.S. citizens were being held against their will at Mustang Rehabilitation Center in Nairobi's heavily Somali Eastleigh neighborhood. The U.S. Embassy considers the densely populated area too dangerous for Americans, and Williams himself couldn't go on the raid. So why would the area be too dangerous for Americans? How would something be too dangerous for Americans? Make that make sense. Cameron Jones says, sound like the best neighborhood in Kenya to me. Facts. If you guys agree with Cameron, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. His Kenyan team assembled unmarked SUVs at a nearby police station, but didn't tell the station commander the details of their operation. So now my question is, why did the station commander allow them to utilize those SUVs then? Why would the station commander allow them to utilize those SUVs then? I gotta agree with Lloyd Sky 9. Lloyd Sky 9 says Africa is truly in a sad state in many regards, and I agree. And again, this is no knock on Africa. This is not a bash Africa channel. You know what I'm saying? This is literally an audit, and what we're doing now is auditing the purity of African politics. That's why the channel is called Auditing Africa. Twice before, the unit had raided rehab centers only to find staff had been tipped off and moved the Americans elsewhere. So now it's too dangerous for Americans to go there, but yet they're sending these Kenyan police in there like crash test dummies to rescue Americans. Who does that? And they're going along with it. They're going along with this nonsense. And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, shout out to the people watching on YouTube. We got 18 people watching on YouTube. If you guys haven't smashed that like button, we're almost at 20 likes. Smash that like button. We got 16 likes right now. Shout out to the people watching on Rumble. We got 25 people watching on Rumble. Smash that like button, hit that bell, and share the stream out. This time, a Kenyan Renaissance team loitered outside of the rehabilitation center in the morning, watching who came and who went. Then the police raiding them pulled up, pretending to be health officials conducting a routine welfare check. The officers pushed their way into the padlocked inner courtyard where dozens of young men wandered aimlessly or knelt in prayer. I mean, like, why are you just up in there wandering aimlessly and kneeling in prayer? What are you doing? Besides just waiting to get caught by the police, which is what's about to happen to you. The detectives demanded the staff to identify the foreign residents. Among them was a slender 16-year-old in a North Face hoodie. He was born in Minneapolis and said his mother had taken him in handcuffs to Muskegon 6 weeks earlier due to his errant teenage behavior. She thought it was a good place, the boy said. Instead, residents complained to police that they were routinely beaten and chained up. And I mean, like, why are you just taking that? The center's director, Ahmed Mohammed Abdi, dismissed their allegations. As long as someone is here, they'll complain about something, he said, although he acknowledged that residents who don't comply with Islamic teachings are locked in a punishment room. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Does that sound like indoctrination? And why are they over there so hell-bent on indoctrinating people with Islam? I mean, these other civilizations around the world, they must just sit back and smile when they see African people just beating up other African people to indoctrinate them with religious myths that aren't native to Africa. Like that just must be a great gleaming feeling. Shout out to my man KO Kid Fit. What's good with it, bro? The detectives bundled 2 Americans and 2 Britons into the vehicles and drove them to a police station. They left young Somali Kenyan men and women at the center despite their pleas to leave. So now I want you guys to pay attention to this. The detectives, who are Kenyans, rescued 2 Americans and 2 Britons, and then they left the Somali and Kenyan men there. The U.S. Embassy contacted the UK High Commission care for the Britons and offered the Americans hotel rooms for the night and tickets back to the United States. I mean, what does this say about these people, man? And this is what I'm telling you guys when I ask about culture. What does that tell you about how they value themselves? These are Kenyan police. They went there, saw Kenyans tied up, left the Kenyans there, and rescued the Americans to safety, brought them back to the embassy, where the embassy, you know what I'm saying, called the British embassy and took care of them. Let me ask you guys a question. Is that is that embarrassing and just a gross display of disloyalty and just absurdity? That deserves an eternal nuclear roast, if you ask me. Those people need to be let know and reminded time and time again that you chose Americans and you chose British people over people from right there in your own country. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, for one, and not trust it until you show patterns of improvement in your judgment. Inspector Courier, commander of the U.S. financed wildlife group, this dude grew up in Kenya's Great Rift Valley, or it's a woman where she could scan the plains for impalas, dicks, and skittish minuscule antelopes with plausibly large eyes. She studied wildlife management and joined the police in 2013 when she heard there were positions for graduates with wildlife and forestry degrees. Advising her team is a former agent for the U.S. National Crime Agency. So now let me ask you guys a question. How do people from the United States just walk up in there and get these positions where they're just hiring people? They just walk up in there, and next thing you know, they're hiring people and making the decisions on who's doing what, who's getting paid to do what, who's going where. I mean, how does that work? How does that work? Does that make any sense whatsoever? Any sense? And so my question is, where are the values coming from? Where are people getting the value to assume that that kind of action is acceptable action? I mean, like, where are they getting it from? You know what I mean? A year ago, the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi announced a $1 million reward for information leading to the capture of Abdi Hussein Ahmed, who had been indicted in New York federal court on charges of trafficking 10 tons of elephant tusks, 420 pounds of rhino horns, and 22 pounds of heroin. Now, let me ask you guys a question. How, as an American, how does this improve your life? And my question is, why are tax dollars being spent on this? Carlton Way says because America wants power. I agree. Not only does America have power, but there are many people that want America to have the power. And a lot of people don't admit that that's what they want. But that is indeed what they want. Because if they didn't want that, then they would act in ways that showed that. And they don't act in ways that show that. They act in ways that support that. And you cannot say that you want something while doing something different. That doesn't make any sense. Ahmed, a Kenyan, was allegedly the last member of a five-man smuggling gang still at large. Kenyan intelligence agents discovered he was hiding out in Meru, a town on the slopes of Mount Kenya. Now, let me ask you guys a question. When the United States makes these busts, or when these vetted units that are puppets for the United States makes these busts, what do you think happens when they arrest and the people and compensates the things that they were selling? What do you think happened to that 20 pounds of heroin? Right. That's facts. If you guys agree with Carlton, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree with Carlton, give me a thumbs down. America is basically Debo. Kenya's like, I thought the country was both of ours. And then America pushes Kenya down and says, these my resources, punk. And then when people around start saying something, they be like, you want something too? No. You want something too? No. In early August, a Kenyan officer, joined by a fish and wildlife agent from the United States Embassy and the British advisor, briefed careers units at its secret headquarters in Nairobi. Why does a fish and wildlife unit have a secret headquarters? I want y'all to put this into consideration. We talking about like park rangers on some James Bond type shit. Like, why does this even exist? Did that make any sense? She dispatched a team to Meru and waited by the phone. When your colleagues are out, you don't sleep, she said. That night, one of her men called with the news that the team had arrested Ahmed in a $3 a night rental house, seizing his phone, clothing, and Quran as possible evidence. Courier immediately thought about the U.S. State Department reward, only to realize later that police aren't eligible. The team rushed Ahmed back to Nairobi, where American DEA, FBI, and Fish and Wildlife agents participated in the interrogation. What the hell did Fish and Wildlife say? They put the flashlight and the gun in his face and asked him, what kind of bait was you using? What kind of bait were you using? Was that a bass on your hook or no? Answer the question. What, like, I didn't know it was going down like that, like with the Fish and Wildlife unit. I didn't know there was out. I didn't know. I didn't know that the Fish and Wildlife unit was out here. You know what I'm saying? Kicking doors in and shit like that. Freeze! Put that salmon down. Where's the tilapia? Like, really? Really? Look, they had a round table of federal agents, the DEA, FBI, and Fish and Wildlife agents. Now, let me ask you guys a question. On those dating websites, how many people actually work for the Fish and Wildlife Department and they lying on their profile talking about they work for the FBI? Yeah, girl, you know I work for the government. You know what I'm saying? I got a badge here and a government issued weapon. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you got a dangerous job? You work for the FBI or the CIA? Yeah, you know, something like that. One time I was in a room, you know what I'm saying? I bet you Myron Gaines was a member of the damn Dandelion Association and shit. He wasn't no damn he wasn't no damn border agent. He was a part of the Wildlife Preservation Bureau doing special investigations and shit. A month later, look at this. Here they go. They pulling in kick doors. These motherfuckers got jackets that say UFW and shit. A month later, 3 U.S. Fish and Wildlife agents escorted Ahmad to the flight in New York City. I wonder if they had him in handcuffs. I wonder, these motherfuckers don't put nobody in no handcuffs, this Fish and Wildlife agent. They'll bring your ass to jail in a net. They bring your ass to jail in a net. Shout out to my man Bronzy Guy. Bronzy Guy said a lot of people don't know about wildlife and fishery officers, but they have the same authority as cops. Yeah, that's facts. Don't get caught fishing somewhere that you're not supposed to be fishing in. They'll get your ass. You know what I'm saying? He pleaded guilty to conspiring to trafficking wildlife and narcotics. This motherfucker had butterflies and Percocets all in the same box trying to sell that shit to people. According to court records, he was sentenced to in May to 4 years in prison. Yeah, nigga, I got these wild ass spiders and some crack. Which one you want? I got everything you need. Like, for real? Like, that's crazy. This motherfucker got all kind of crazy centipedes and shit inside of his trench coat. He opened up his trench coat. It'd be a whole bunch of weird ass squirrel-sized roaches and shit. And then in the other one is a whole bunch of Percocets and oxycodone, you know what I'm saying, promethazine and all kinds of shit. That's wild. Courier's unit, which also investigates trafficking in endangered plants, scored another win in September when the police got a tip that Calvin Jumaboy Ombata, a senior DCI officer who wasn't part of a U.S. vetted unit, was smuggling sandalwood in Samburu County, Kenya. They said, freeze, put them branches down, put them down. Sandalwood, which is used in perfume, soap, and traditional medicine, has been virtually wiped out in Uganda and Tanzania and is listed as endangered in Kenya. Now, let me ask you guys a question. I think one thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what kind of products sandalwood is used in. And then once we figure out what kind of products sandalwood is used in, we need to figure out what companies it is that have been exploiting the sandalwood supply. Would you guys agree? If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. Courier assembled a team of her officers and drove 7 hours to Samburu. They found 13.5 tons of sandalwood and 2 vehicles at Juma's home, along with a military rifle and ammunition, Courier said. Juma pleaded not guilty and is currently standing trial in Nairobi. He could face a fine of about $21,000 or 5 years in prison, according to his attorney. Juma said the wood wasn't his and that much of it was evidence from a smuggling case he himself was investigating, the attorney said. The 3 alleged pangolin poachers arrested in August pleaded not guilty in a Kenyan court. They face a minimum of 3 years in prison if convicted, according to their lawyer. Like most Kenyans, the presiding judge had never seen a pangolin. During one hearing, the U.S.-funded police advisor Googled pangolin and approached the bench to show the judge what the case was all about. The animal, which weighed 29 pounds, had a street value of $30,000. According to a court document. So now the judges didn't even know what the trial was over. They had to Google what the trial was over during court. How crazy is that? How crazy is that, ladies and gentlemen? So now here it says wildlife officials tagged the rescued pangolin with a tracking device and released it into a forest. Later, the pangolin was spotted alive, but without the device. Officials suspect a hyena chewed it off. I don't know why they even ended this like this. But now, what does this tell you? What this tells you is that the United States, they spend a lot of money. Shout out to my man, AB Promotions. The United States spends a lot of money funding shadow police units all over the world. Now, the question that I would like to pose to everybody is, based on what we discussed in the beginning of the stream, why would the United States fund all of these shadow police units? And here's the even better question. What's an effective strategy to deal with all of this? What's an effective strategy to deal with these shadow units? Because they definitely have a negative effect on the country that they're in, and we need to figure out what that negative effect is, and we need to see if we've experienced similar effects, when and how to create effective barriers of entrance, effective barriers of entry to make sure that those kind of quote unquote contaminants remain on the outside of the operation and not on the inside. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice, smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers. Make sure you leave your thoughts, comments at the end of the video. If you're not part of the Discord, make sure that you hit that Discord link that's in the chat. It also gives notifications, so you'll never miss a notification. And I will catch you all on the next video. All right.